Okay. Good evening, everyone, or good morning, good afternoon, depending on the location. And welcome to tonight's virtual book talk on the recently published book, The Birds of Egypt and the Middle East, published by this month by AUC Press. I would like to welcome you all for the talk. And my name is Suzanne Inewi. I'm the marketing manager for AUC Press and bookstores. And I hope that everyone could see me and hear me well. Okay.
Yep.
And our book talk is gonna take around 1 hour, and we will have room for Q&A throughout the session. So please make sure to type that in the Q&A box so we could see them and we don't miss them in the chat. Okay. Also, for our viewers on Facebook, this is going live right now. If you have questions, type them in the comment section and we will make sure that we ask them to our moderator and speaker. We're very excited for tonight's talk and we thank you all for joining us from all over the world. Now, let me introduce you to our speakers and join me in welcoming Professor Richard Hoath, who is a leading naturalist based in Egypt, having traveled extensively throughout the Middle East. He's the author and illustrator of A Field Guide to the Mammals of Egypt, also published by AUC Press, and many other books and articles on the wildlife of the region. He's a founding member and serves on the Egyptian Ornithological Rarities Committee and is a longtime member of the Ornithological Society of the Middle East and is currently on the faculty of the American University in Cairo. And he's discussing today his recent publication, The Birds of Egypt and the Middle East. And our moderator for tonight is Farah Kamel. Hi, Farah. Farah is a partner and the current manager of Dayma, and which is a social enterprise that designs and facilitates eco-educational programs to help build a community of environmental stewards and biomimics who are innovators inspired by nature. Thank you, Farah, for moderating this talk and for joining us. And I'm gonna leave now the floor to you.
It's my absolute pleasure. I've been talking about doing this with Khaled for a while now because I was so excited that a new bird guide was coming on because your last one was used so much in our journeys. And I was delighted to find out that Dr. Richard Hoath would be the one that would be authoring it. So thank you so much, Professor Hoath, for agreeing to do this talk. And
my pleasure, my pleasure.
And I hope you've inspired quite a few people in our network. So what we're gonna do today, I hope, is speak to you mostly about your work, both books. I've got both over here, the bird one that you guys just published and your Mammals of Egypt one. And I encourage everyone to send us questions so that we can fuse them into our conversation. Your bio says that you're one of the foremost naturalists in Egypt. I know that the definition for most of us is very vague, and I was wondering what you think a naturalist is and how does one become one?
I don't think you actually become a naturalist. It's there within you. And in my preparation for today, I'd like to share something rather special with you. When I was tiny, we have this lovely, very naturalist expression in English, knee high to a grasshopper. It means we're very small. So I'd be sort of 4 or 5 years old, and my grandfather gave me a book, and I still have that book with me today, and it's an observer's book of birds. Bird guide.
How cool!
And he gave this to me when I was about 5 or 6 years old, and it's full of paintings and pictures of the birds that you can find in the UK. And it amazed me because I looked at this book and I looked at the pictures, and then I could go outside into the little garden. We didn't have a big garden, it was a little garden, And I could recognize the birds that I saw in that garden and identify them and learn all about them from this book. And it's an enormous privilege to take that through decades to arrive now at publishing my own book, The Birds of Egypt, for this country. But there's also another bit of serendipity, if you like. And this will be the first slide, I think, Khaled. Yeah. When I first arrived here, I actually came out here with an oil company, which seems very, very bizarre. And it's amazing how things work out. But this was the first article I ever published on Egyptian wildlife. And the painting that you have there is of a bird called the Senegal thickney, which a lot of the Egyptian people following this will know much better as the Karawan. So this I painted way, way back in 1988 for that very first article. And what's the bird on the cover of the present book? It's the Karawan. So it's come full cycle for me as a writer, from that very, very first article I published as a very naive naturalist here to this book that I'm enormously proud of, The Birds of Egypt, illustrated with these wonderful, wonderful photographs. The photographs I haven't taken for the most part. They are from a huge archive of photographs, where possible, from Egyptian photographers. So a very, very good friend of mine, Dina Ali and Rafiq Khalil, they have photographs in here. Dina and Rafiq, particularly, I thank them for their photographs of a very rare owl, a boomer called Hume's tawny owl. That was the one most wonderful illustration in the book that I can think of. So it's been quite a journey, and the Karawan has been a big part of that journey, from that very first article to now cover page of the new photographic guide.
That's awesome. So how do you go from a young knee-high, how do you go from being knee-high to
a
grasshopper in the UK, and then actually publish your own book about birds? So like, take me through how, did you need someone to train you? Was there a community? How do you get there?
The passion was always there for birds and animals and fish and anything with fur, feather, or scales. It was always there. And I did biology to A level when I was at school. But as soon as we moved inside into the labs and it became much more technical, I lost a lot of the passion for it. And that's not to disparage anybody who retains that. And I know there are some biologists who are going to be joining us today, and I have enormous respect for them, and they have helped me enormously with this book and with other books. But my passion has been with outside, seeing the animals and writing about them and painting them and drawing them. And I think, Khaled, we can go to the next slide. Inshallah.
Sorry, hold on.
Are we able to do that? If
we
not,
are,
I can just keep going. I travel a lot, and I travel because of my love for birds and animals. And one of the great joys of working in academia is the long amount of time that you get off. I worked in corporate jobs very early on in my career, where you got 3 or 4 weeks holiday a year, and that was it. In academia, you get the long, I'm not going to call them holidays, because they're not holidays, but you get between teaching, you get these long periods of time, and the time has been the biggest privilege I've had from working in academia. And in the summer, I don't choose a country to go to, I choose an animal to find. And I spend my summer trying to find that animal and then writing about it, drawing it, painting it, and everything. And the first one of these animals was the gorilla. I went to the Democratic Republic of Congo, which then was called Zaire. And I went into the rainforests in these volcanoes and the mountains in central Congo to try and find the gorillas. And I did. And it was the most incredible experience.
When was this?
Sorry?
When was this?
This was 1992, I think.
Okay.
93. Wasn't my first adventure trip, but it was the first one that really focused me on the importance of writing and illustrating and recording your wildlife experiences. Mm-hmm. And I went into the forests, and the first time I went to see the gorillas in the mountains there, I sat with them after the guides and the trackers had found the, oh, here we go. Next, yeah, that's what it looks like from a photograph. I went to see them, and it was the most enormously privileged experience. I was with them for an hour, and I was going click, 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 click with the camera. And I came back from the mountains after that, and I realized I'd never actually seen the gorillas properly. I just
You'd only seen them
through
the viewfinder.
So I then went back. I had the privilege of being able to go back several times, and the next following slides are the sketches I took of them, and they're all recorded in these journals. So each of these journals from the 70 countries that I've been to, hundreds and hundreds of pages, and these are photographs, these are sketches of the animals that I've seen. So from then on, I've just been sketching, recording, photographing everything that I've seen with a particular focus on wildlife. And the sketches, they then become finished art pieces. And this is one of the gorillas.
Yeah, that one's my favorite.
One of the female gorillas. So this is the sort of journey. You know, I've just spent this wonderful epic voyage of living my dream of seeing all of these animals that you normally just see in zoos. I've seen them in the wild, and the mammal guide came out of that because I wanted to do the same for Egypt. When I came out to Egypt all those years ago, nobody was doing this. In the UK, the RSPB, the Royal Society for the Protection of Birds, has over 1 million members. The first time I went out with the Ornithological Society of Egypt, there were 6 members.
6 members?
Sorry? Was
it all people you already knew?
Pretty well, yes. So I wanted a field guide to tell me what mammals I was seeing, what birds I was seeing. A wonderful, wonderful naturalist and academic, Sharif Bahaldeen, who was one of the peer reviewers of the bird book. Mm-hmm. He was one of my mentors in Egypt. He showed me the way. And his book, The Common Birds of Egypt, illustrated by his own paintings, is still available. But it was fabulous. And so after I'd published these articles, I then went ahead and put a proposal to AUC Press for my first book, which was a book called Natural Selections. I've got a copy here with a lovely picture of a fox on the front. And on the basis of that, I was then approached to write a field guide to the mammals. And
oh, they approached you. Were you approached from the press?
it was mutually. They knew what I'd done, so they wanted to know what else I would like to publish after Natural Selections. I had a very clear idea of what I wanted to do. I wanted to do the mammal guide.
So walk us through the mammal guide, like what goes into actually like making that guide, because most of these, it's pretty rare to see most of the mammals in Egypt, right?
Absolutely. When we start talking about the birds, because this is my journey, birds are much easier. Mammals are really, really difficult. And the mammal book took about 10 years to write, but more importantly, 10 years to illustrate, because that was illustrated by my own paintings. And we got the final result there. Can we go back a couple of slides, Khaled? Yeah. When you're drawing and painting animals, whether they're birds or reptiles, or in this case, mammals, you have to go underneath the skin and know what's happening with the muscles and the skeleton and the sinews and everything. So the example I'm giving here is from the cat plate in the mammal book. I went and drew in very great detail the musculature of the cat. Not like Leonardo da Vinci, who did it from dead specimens. This was done from an anatomy book, which I copied, so I could get an understanding of what was happening underneath the cat. Then next slide, Khaled, please. Then I went to, where possible, responsible zoos and organizations to draw the animals in as near wild context as I possibly could. And this is a sketch of a jungle cat or swamp cat from an organization in Britain that rescues wildcat species from the illegal trade. So this was a swamp cat, absolutely beautiful. And it's found in Egypt, in Fayoum, in the Delta, and in the Nile Valley, at least down to Luxor. So I knew the anatomy of the cat. I knew it inside. I sketched them from life in where I possibly could. You hardly ever see them in the wild. So I had to use these responsible institutes. And then that transformed into, and if we go down to the next slide, the finished plate for the book. So you got the swamp cat at the top there, you got the African wildcat in the middle, and then you got this beautiful small desert cat, the sand cat. So that was a whole journey. That book would not have been published. AUC Press were very honest with me. They said, if you want this book published, we're happy to do it, but you have to have it illustrated. I took on that challenge. I took on the challenge and did the paintings myself. The current guide is different. This guide is to the birds. What's the next slide, Khaled? Where are we going? I can't remember the order. Oh, here we go. Here's a bird. And again, for a naturalist, it is seeing and identifying these birds in the wild and knowing what makes them tick. And that my narratives, my writing of the field guide would not have been possible without all of that experience. That goes into my paintings. So this is of a wonderful bird called the purple gallinule, purple swamp hen, as it's more recently known. And I think you'll agree it's a dramatic bird.
Yeah.
But you have it so close to Cairo.
Yeah, we've been really lucky with our
Go on a
birding.
felucca, go from TGI's at the felucca place in Mardi.
Yeah.
And they'll take you around the reed beds on this island just in the river, and you'll see this white backside disappearing into the reeds. This is this wonderful bird, the swamp hen. Yeah. What I had to do for the new book, the guide to the birds, was to find the photographs, and photographs that were sufficiently good and clear for a reader to identify them in the field. The mammal book covered all of the mammals, and most people are not going to see any of them, or very few of them at all. The field guide is a guide to put in your knapsack on any day out, or just sit on your balcony, and you're able to flick through the pages and identify the bird that you're seeing. So hopefully it's got a much wider audience.
And it's pretty small. Like I was pleasantly surprised with how portable it is. I wanted to ask you, it's unclear to me how one gets the information. So you said for the mammalian guide, you got you actually illustrated it yourself, and the bird guide you curated, like you picked the pictures from other people that had contributed.
A huge bank of photographs that we had, but for a field guide, you have to be you have to pick the photograph to be the photograph, because you're only allowed one opportunity in this book. It has to be the photograph that most captures the birds that you're actually seeing. With a field guide that I painted, here we go. So we got, these are sandpipers. These are shorebirds that you'll see on the shores of the Red Sea, see on the shores of the North Coast, and also Fayoum and the other large lakes in Egypt. Difficult to tell apart. So each photograph was picked to show the key features. So you've got the curlew sandpiper there at the top. I'm not sure whether it's top left or top right.
Left.
From where I am, it's top left, which has a rather slender down curved bill. Top right, you have the dunlin, which is very similar, but the bill is slightly thicker. And then at the bottom, you've got the sanderling, which has a straighter bill, and then the little stint, which is smaller with a much stubbier bill. But they're all very similar. So the photographs were chosen to accentuate the differences, but also the prose, the writing, within a very few words. Each one of these, I think I was limited to 120 words. I had to describe them. I had to describe their distribution, where they were found in Egypt, but also where else in the Middle East. I had to talk about their habitat. I had to talk about their habits, all in 120 words. It was an enormous discipline,
Yeah. And where does this information come from? So like, I understand that obviously you probably didn't run long-term research on dunlins and their habitats, or little stints in their habitats, correct?
Well, yes, no. I've been in Egypt over 30 years now, and I've been out in the field for all of those 30 years whenever I can. So it comes with a huge amount of experience.
Okay.
But I mean, also, things like the length, for instance, you've got the length at the top there, the Latin name, all of that comes from the book and sources, and all the sources are credited. But the actual, when it comes to talking about the field features and the habitats, that all comes from experience, which is accumulated over many, many, many years.
Awesome. So it's observation, like your own observations in the field, those journals that you showed us.
Absolutely.
So you've published 2 guides with AUC Press, and you've talked about the motivation to write a field guide was that you couldn't find one.
There wasn't one.
Yeah. So
what bigger inspiration could that be, or motivation?
Yeah, I was tempted to do one myself when AUC Press told me that the other one was out of print. I'm like, no, that won't do. So who's involved in getting the field guide made or like published? What are the challenges that you meet on the way?
The challenge is to make it as accurate as possible, because it's not like a coffee table book or a the object of a field guide is for the person to go out in the field, whether it's in Cairo, by the river in Zamalek, outside the Marriott or wherever, or in the middle of the Western Desert, or on the Red Sea coast, or wherever. And the object of the field guide is for the person who is using that guide to identify the bird or the mammal, in the mammal book's case, that they're seeing. That's the ultimate aim. One of the special things about Egypt, though, which I put in the introduction to the bird book especially, is that this isn't a legacy of 100 years or 200 years of people watching birds. The birds, you go to Saqqara and the tombs of Idud or Mereruka, and you see on the tomb walls there these incredibly accurate representations of the pharaoh or the nobleman, Idud Mereruka or whatever, hunting in the papyrus swamps, and they're hunting hippos and crocodiles. Crocodile is still found here, but only in Lake Nasser. Hippo, long gone. But around the rather ornamental papyrus swamps, there are all of these birds that are portrayed with incredible accuracy. And I, as a 21st century naturalist, can go to these tombs and I can look at the walls of the tombs to the birds that they painted and the mammals they painted. Keep that one, Khaled. I'll talk about that in a second. And I can identify them to species level, even with the pied kingfisher, which is this lovely black and white kingfisher we get all along the Nile, even in central Cairo. I can even identify whether it's a male or a female. These ancient Egyptians were absolutely incredible with the way they recorded the natural world around them. This is can we just go one back, Khaled? This is the wonderful thing about natural history, whether it's birds or mammals or insects, butterflies, spiders, whatever. There's always something happening. If you're interested in birds, look up. There they are. This morning, the air was full of pallid swifts screaming and screeching. I came into my office, and outside my office was this beetle. And it's a scarab beetle. And you know how big it is because sadly this was pre-AUC smoking policy. There's a cigarette butt on the side. So it's a pretty big beetle. So I saw this beetle in outside my office first thing in the morning, and my mind was working. This is a scarab beetle. This was worshipped by the ancient Egyptians. So in my artistic mind, I thought of this beetle not creeping over a concrete block with a cigarette butt next to it, but creeping over a representation from pharaonic times of the god that they worshipped. And here we have it, the god Khepri. That's what I imagine the beetle doing. Not walking over concrete with a cigarette butt, but walking over a representation which I drew from one of the pharaonic tomb paintings of the god Khepri, this little beetle that, well, actually quite a big beetle, that was worshipped as by the ancient Egyptians. It was the beetle that rolled the sun across the skies every day. And it's just wonderful.
It's very beautiful, and it is one of the coolest signs of rebirth, in my opinion.
Yeah.
It shows like this like cyclical nature to the life is one of the most interesting things that people talk about in all different cultures. I was wondering, so let's bring ourselves back to the book, because we'd be remiss if we, because of this being, is this available? Because last time I checked, it was actually sold out already. I think they're about to restock.
Well, I didn't know. That's a question. That's a question for the press people. I'm delighted.
Yes, it's available at AC bookstores, but we sold out the minute we stocked, actually. And we have restocked, so you can order it for delivery anywhere in Egypt. It sounds like an ad, but I mean, you can get your copy anywhere. Don't worry, AC bookstores.
I'm delighted, because I really want this. I want everybody to use it. This is not a book for professional ornithologists. This is a book for anybody with even the slightest interest in natural history, who just walks by the Nile and sees a bird they're not familiar with, looks up in the sky and sees a bird they're not familiar with, who even hears a call. I mean, I go back to the example of the carawan, this bird that I illustrated in 1988 for my first ever article here. It's now on the cover of my book here. I mean, the carawan, virtually everybody has heard the carawan. It's in Egyptian culture, it's in Egyptian films, it's in the background of many Egyptian movies, but nobody's ever seen one, or very few people have seen one. And this book shows you what to look for. If you want to find the carawan, one of the best places, by the way, is to go to the Gezira Club at night, and on the golf course, they're out there feeding. They're a nocturnal bird. So I want this book to be used by anybody who has the remotest interest in natural history.
And it's quite easy to use. So actually, like when we use it in the field, what we do is mostly trying to get people to interact and observe. And I'm very different. You could not get me to flip through a guide without external stimulation. And then, but on the other hand, some of our journeyers, we posted a picture on Instagram. One of our younger journeyers this week was was finding very interesting birds inside the book and illustrating them herself, like sketching them.
I think one of the things that will surprise people is what's that one you're showing, Farah?
The one that she was drawing was the African skimmer, which I've never seen. Like I had never seen this before until there's a group on Facebook called Birds of Egypt, Birding Egypt. And someone, I think it was actually Dr. Sharif Bahadin that posted a picture, a very fuzzy looking picture. And I was like, wait, what's that? I've never seen that. And it came out in the book, and it's quite a striking bird. Very funny looking.
Yeah, but it's also an amazing bird. It's the skimmers are a very small group of birds. We have the black skimmer in the New World in the Americas. We have the Indian skimmer, and we've got the African skimmer, and this is the one in my book. It only is found here right in the south and breeds sporadically on sandbanks and Lake Nasser. But if you look at it carefully, The lower bill
longer.
is much longer than the top bill. And that's because when it hunts, it cruises through the water. That's the upper bill. This is the lower bill. Cruises through the water as soon as it picks up a fish, because the lower bill is going through the water, it flicks it up and captures it. And it's one of the fastest reactions in the animal world. So there's a story behind each one of these birds, but also just how beautiful some of these birds are. Let's have a look. Yeah, look at some of these.
Yeah.
That's the European bee-eater. Even if you're in central Cairo, and if you're on the new campus at AUC,
yes, I see all the time.
April the 23rd, you can almost nail it down to a date. These bee-eaters will be flying through. They're heading from sub-Saharan Africa through to European breeding grounds.
And they have a very distinct whirring sound to them.
Well, it's this
hear them
before you crew, and you look up. You can't see them at first. You look up, and there they are. Fabulously beautiful, turquoise and yellow and chestnut, and there's this black bandit mask. What else do we have here? The hudhud. Everybody's familiar with the hudhud, the hoopoe. And in virtually every language where the hudhud is found, its name comes from its call. Hoopoe, hudhud. Even its Latin name, upopo, epops, comes from its noise, and that's associated with Egyptian culture as well. The bird that delivered the wisdom to Solomon. Kingfishers. Where's my favorite kingfisher? I've got to get my favorite kingfisher.
When we're on the Nile, and then there's a sudden flutter of turquoise.
That's it. That's
so
the white,
exciting to point
kingfisher. And one of my paintings is of that as well. Here we go. And that was painted. If you look at the background, it's perched on a TV aerial. And that's because in the middle of a city of 23 million people, it was 23 million yesterday, probably 24 million today. In the middle of a city of 23 million people, I'm seeing this from my balcony. I mean, for me, that's just extraordinary.
It is very, we are super lucky, to be honest. The Nile is so giving every single time we go out on it.
Yeah.
And
well, I want to do one of these trips, Farah.
Please, we're so excited.
We're working on this, okay?
Good.
Don't ruin the surprise we have. But we've had a question from one of our followers on Facebook, actually, that's asking, what's the hardest bird to find or most challenging bird to find or observe in the wild in Egypt, I guess?
Yeah, which also links with one of the questions we have here, because Mahmoud said that he's been trying to sketch birds, but they won't stand still long enough. So you told me that you have been sketching, and we were wondering, where do you sketch from?
I'll tell you, I'll show you the easiest sketch I've done.
The easiest one?
The easiest sketch.
Was it dead? Dead
bird.
bird.
When I was doing the mammal guide, in the Eastern Desert and in South Sinai and in Sinai, there is this desert lynx, like a bobcat in the States. Beautiful, with very long ear tufts.
Yeah.
And you know, they're hardly ever seen. I didn't stand a hope of sketching one in the wild here. Yeah. So again, I went to the Cat Survival Trust in the UK, where they have caracals. And I agree with that questioner. It is really difficult sketching birds or animals in the wild. But this one,
Was it
I
sleep?
bored him so much he just fell asleep in front of me. It made my life so much easier.
That's awesome.
But that very rarely happens. You have to do lots and lots and lots of sketches, and you can put together the parts of them that go right from each one to build up like a melange of the separate elements that have gone correctly. But
so your advice is to kind of do the research, right? To
well, if you want to sketch, just sketch as much as possible. I've got some from Australia here.
So did you, before you got this proficient at it, were you sketching from photographs?
No, I do sketch. I do for finished pieces. I have to refer to photographs to get the absolute detail, but I much prefer to sketch from life. Here we go. So these are sketches of fur seals from Australia.
They look like they're posing.
They are. They're sexy, all sinuous and curvy. Very, very lovely. And I've got pages of them. And none of them works completely as a finished piece, but you get lots and lots of sketches and you put together the elements that work, which is, you know, how the gorilla portrait worked out. I took lots of sketches of the gorillas and I put them together to make this final. This is just a pencil drawing. It's not a painting, it's a pencil drawing.
So it takes a lot of observation and a little bit of imagination, yes?
A lot of observation and, yeah, hard work. You're not going to go out there and do the perfect sketch, just as you're not going to go out there and get the perfect photograph. With the photographic guide, it was really difficult to go through all of these photographs from all of these different photographers and try and find that one photograph that summed up that species of bird in one image. Mm-hmm. Really, really difficult.
Yeah, I can imagine. A lot of birds are much harder to identify, especially when they don't have their wings spread out.
Well, we call them LBJs. These are the larks and warblers. LBJ stands for little brown job. So just a basic asfour. What's that? Oh, asfour. You know, I'll give you a basic asfour. This is an Upcher's warbler from mangroves near Masa Alam. It's just a basic little brown bird, but with a lot of experience, and this is where the experience comes in. You note the pale wing panel, which other similar species like the olivaceous warbler don't have. Slightly larger, a different jizz. Jizz is a term used by naturalists to sum up the overall impression of a bird.
So which asfour was the most challenging for you to find and observe in the wild?
Which bird? I think my favorite bird, and the bird that I wanted on the cover of this book, if it wasn't going to be the carawan, is an owl.
I see.
And it's this one.
And is it difficult for like the obvious reasons because it's nighttime?
Most owls are nocturnal. So that's one difficulty. But I bought a field guide to the birds of Britain, Europe, North Africa, and the Middle East when I was about 12. I got beyond England, then I wanted to spread my wings, to use a bird term. And Hume's tawny owl was in there, and it said one of the least known birds in the world.
Wow.
And it had a painting of Hume's tawny owl. And I've seen it here in Egypt, in Wadi Faran, and also in the Eastern Desert. And I've seen it with Sharif Bahauddin. He was the person who found it for me. Originally in Wadi Faran with his sadly late wife Mindy, but also in near Wadi Gamal protected area, south of Marsa Alam. So that's my special bird, I think, Hume's tawny owl. Owls are special.
They certainly are, and they're quite charming when they stay still long enough for you to spot them. Susan, do we have any questions that I'm not getting from Facebook, or should we go on with the ones that I can actually see?
Yeah, we've had a question about if any of these birds are on the verge of extinction, actually.
In Egypt?
Yes.
Some of them are very rare, but one of the interesting things about Egypt is that you have the North Coast and you have the Red Sea coast, but the other boundaries are absolute straight lines. So the boundary between the border between Egypt and Libya, for instance, is pretty well a straight line drawn in the sand. And the border between Sudan and Egypt, again, is pretty well a straight line. So they're not natural borders in the sense of they were a river or a mountain range or something. So there are no birds that are confined only to Egypt. Hume's tawny owl is perhaps the rarest bird that we have here, because that's rare throughout its limited range throughout the rest of the Middle East. With mammals, there are some mammals that are found here. The pallid gerbil, for instance, is found in Egypt and nowhere else. So we do have an endemic mammal.
I think I saw one. Do they
No,
they
there are
range in
lots of
Jabal
different gerbils.
Wait, no, the one I saw, I think, is a dwarf based on the ones that you illustrated. A dwarf.
I mean, the gerbils look. Here we go.
Yeah.
This is from the mammal book. These are gerds, which are slightly larger gerbils, and they all look very, very similar. But the pallid gerbil is endemic to Egypt, but there's no bird that's found in Egypt, nowhere else. But there is one.
Sorry, go on.
There's a bird called the Egyptian plover, which is a wading bird, and it's not in my guide because a lot of people now call it the non-Egyptian nun-plover. It's no longer found in Egypt. The last record was from 1932, and it's not a plover. It's related to another group of birds called the pratincoles and coursers. It's a beautiful, beautiful bird. And I've seen it in Omdurman and Khartoum in Sudan. Herodotus, when he was here, 2,500 years ago, he called it the crocodile bird because he recorded it from Egypt and reported that it walked into the mouths of crocodiles and picked out the parasites and leeches from between the teeth of the crocodiles while they were resting on the sandbanks. But sadly, that's extinct in modern Egypt. The sacred ibis is called the sacred ibis to this day because it was worshipped by the ancient Egyptians as the god Thoth. That's no longer found in modern Egypt. What have we got there, Farah? Yeah, that's a sacred ibis. All white on the back with a black neck. But we do have the glossy ibis, which is still found in modern Egypt. So we have an ibis here. So the great god Thoth lives on in Egypt, but not as the sacred ibis.
That's unfortunate. So actually, to answer also the question that came in about how rare, your book has a lovely feature, which is this very helpful tool.
It's a
table
checklist.
at the back.
Yep,
With a
that's every bird that's been recorded in Egypt and its status. Yes.
Yep. So for the people that were asking, it does list things as either near threatened or vulnerable, or if they're of least concern based on the IUCN rating.
Yeah.
And what I found extremely helpful was this one, which kind of tells you their status, whether they're visitors in winter or or if they breed. And that is a fantastic little tool that's in the
It's also in the individual narratives. It will tell you whether they're resident or whether they're breeding. There are a fair number of resident species in Egypt. There are a lot of winter visitors here. So lots of birds that breed in Europe, particularly the waders that I was talking about earlier, the curlew sandpiper, the dunlin, the little stint, etc. They come here and they spend the winter here. So that's a great place to go, to Lake Karun or the North Coast, the Red Sea coast, etc., to see these winter visitors. And then there are the passage visitors. These are the migrants that breed in Europe and don't winter here, but fly through Egypt and winter in sub-Saharan Africa. And then, of course, they make that awesome journey back in the spring from sub-Saharan Africa through Egypt and into Europe. And this is why Egypt is so important for migratory birds, because the birds of prey and the cranes and the pelicans and the storks, the big birds, they're so big that when they fly, they soar rather than flap. And soaring birds need these thermals. And these thermals are best found on coastal areas with cliffs, where the hot air is funneled up and the birds use those thermals to soar and gain height and then soar on to their next destination. And Ein Sukna in March and April is absolutely superb for birds of prey, the eagles, the hawks, the buzzards, the falcons, and also the storks and pelicans and cranes.
So that actually brings us to one of the questions that came on through Facebook, which is, do we know of any of how climate change might be affecting the distribution of our avian biodiversity or altering its abundance?
Yes. Not so much in Egypt yet, but certainly in Europe, where a lot of Egypt's migratory species and wintering species are coming from, they're staying longer in Europe from anecdotal evidence, it seems. And birds from countries like Egypt, like the little egret and the cattle egret and the great white egret, are now moving northwards and are now breeding in countries like the UK and Denmark and Scandinavia, where they weren't found a couple of decades ago.
Wow.
Which is annoying for me, because I thought the little egret was really exotic. And you know, I have my little egrets here when I go down to the Nile. Now I go back to London and we got little egrets in the Thames. Where's my exotic gone?
Yeah.
But yes, climate change, it's very complex. You know, whether short-term changes are affecting birds permanently, or whether we have to look at the longer term. But it certainly seems that birds that you would normally associate with the Mediterranean region are now moving northwards, and how that will affect migratory patterns, whether these birds won't bother moving back during migration, we don't know yet. But it's a bit scary, but a lot of work's got to be done.
So another question that's come through is, what's your next project?
I've done the mammals, I've done the birds. Sharif has got a superb book out with AUC Press on the reptiles and amphibians. So
yes.
I'm not going to touch that. Yep.
You guys are like a good 20% of my library, I hope you know. We use them so much. Like, seriously, I'm not exaggerating. They're wonderful field guides. I was wondering if like, one of the biggest problems for me as someone who's very interested in nature but very ignorant of it is...
I think you're being very modest.
No. Anything I have is because of these books. So how do you create a community? Like, how you said one of the things that helped you a lot was having someone like Dr. Sharif to help you along and kind of help you identify and find places. So we've had questions on Facebook, like, what are the best spots in Egypt to sketch birds? And like, how do you find these places, or how do you learn about these things?
Well, I had Sharif and Mindy and other people who were very, very supportive, including just people who support you. Andy Main was a biology professor who was very supportive for my mammal book and also peer reviewed my bird book. People like that who just encourage you. And I think, and I don't know whether Sarah El Said is in on the conversation, but she's here.
Yeah, she said, not a question, but one of my fondest memories as an undergrad in 98, 99 was following Richard Hoath and his green Neva in Ain al-Sukhna and finding those migratory birds. It was incredible how easily you identified them. I credit my love for birds and bird watching to you. Thanks for inspiring a generation with your articles, books, and field explanations.
Oh, bless her. But you find someone, and if I can do that to anybody, I would, but you can't be everywhere. So my students sometimes one of them shows a real enthusiasm, and we have this wonderful project at the university over the past few springs, where we've had a pair of falcons, kestrels, sacre, that are breeding on campus.
I'm sorry, I'm kidding because someone actually sent a question about that. It's so funny that you mentioned it. Go on.
Was it Mena?
No,
it was Nigel Jones. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Say hi to Nigel for me. But yeah, we've had these kestrels, and there was this student, Mena, who wanted, she was doing her senior thesis project in biology. She wanted to do something with fur and feathers, and biology is now getting more and more to do with genetics and biochemistry and pre-med, etc. So they asked me for some advice as to what they could do with Mena, and I thought that these falcons were breeding on campus. And the luck has got so much to do with this. I thought they were breeding. I came in and I get the first bus in. So I'm on campus about sort of 10 to 8, quarter to 8. And I was walking down past the admin building and this shadow flew over me. And I looked up and it was a falcon, and she or he had a rodent in their talons, and it disappeared into this gap in the wall of the admin building. And I saw where the falcon had disappeared into, and I went into the admin building and went to the floor that I thought they were at, and went to the place where I thought he or she had disappeared into, and it was the men's bathroom on the same floor as the president and provost office. And it turns out that our falcons were nesting on the window ledge of the men's bathroom on the admin building. And I phoned up the president's office and the provost's office and said, look, we want to do a research project. Can you close down the men's bathroom?
Can we?
And to their credit, people don't give the administration credit very often. But to their credit, they shut the bathroom down. We got our computer in there with a camera on the nest, and we filmed them for, I think it was 4 semesters until, or 4 springs before COVID came in. So I'm hoping that they'll be back. So it was luck. I was on campus, I looked up, I saw this falcon flying in. I knew what it was doing. I went up, I found where it was nesting, and we got in there, and it led to a whole research project that which went on for several seasons. Luck, that's got a lot to do with it as well.
I guess, unless you look up.
Unless you look
not
up.
only luck.
Yeah, always look up.
Not only luck. You need to look up. So I think we're out of time, but I would like to ask you one last question. It's a question that a friend of ours, Amr al-Hadi, you might know him. He was a ranger, and he's a biologist too. He's been spreading it around on social media, and basically it translates to, what do birds mean to you?
The quick answer would be birds mean everything, but I don't like being labeled as a bird watcher or a bird specialist. I love the label naturalist, and that means birds, mammals, reptiles, amphibians, fish, insects, spiders, scorpions, anything with fur, feathers, scales. I don't know why it is that I have this intense fascination with them. So it's not what the birds do for me. It's what does wildlife do for me, and it does everything for me. It's wonderful. When I wake up in the morning, I wake up to this dawn chorus. I know what's happening outside my building. I hear my kestrels, not the kestrels on campus. They're calling. She's giving him a hard time.
That's so funny. Georgina Cole also has her kestrels across from the window.
I had barn owls. I had barn owls across from me with Hala 3 or 4 years ago. They kept us up at night. The bulbuls,
so you call each other and complain about the barn owls, would you?
No. The barn owls would just keep us up because they were nesting at the building across the street in an abandoned balcony, and it was the little ones, the chicks, all night. What a lovely way to be kept up at night. It was just wonderful. Wonderful.
Richard, thank you so much for a lovely evening. It really is one of the most exciting things. I don't think I'm ever quite as quiet as when I'm listening to a naturalist talk about their experience. Anybody that knows me knows I cannot shut up. So and in my, I am hoping that you will be working on a fish guide soon, since apparently Leaf's cornered.
I think in the
more other scales.
Let's talk, and I think we can do this with the press as well. Let's talk about an outside walk or a felucca trip or something like that.
Yeah, anytime.
To see birds, or with the Gezira Club.
Yeah, we're gonna be, us as Dayma will definitely be posting about our next birding. We're also going to be part of El Guna's Earth Week. and hopefully going to be part of a bird and a dolphin expedition in that weekend. So that's like the nearest thing I know of.
The mammal guide covers all of the sea mammals as well as the mammals on land. In fact, there's a dolphin on the cover of that.
It's a very pretty one too, but I've never seen that one.
Common dolphin, yeah, it's called it is the common dolphin, but it's not common in Egypt.
No. I am very grateful. Thank you all for your attendance. Thank you for your questions. And this is going to go back up on Facebook, if I understand correctly. YouTube.
Yes.
If you have any questions for us as Dayma, we're very happy to answer them, and we will be monitoring the video to answer them. And I guess we're gonna let you know when we go on an expedition.
Absolutely. And I'd like to thank Susan, Khaled and Ingrid for all of their help with setting this up and everything. And of course to you, Farah, the wonderful phone conversations we've had over the past few days. And I've really enjoyed it. So thank you to everybody who's also coming on this.
We love your book.
To thank everyone who joined us from all over the world and for your comments and questions. It was a very interesting talk, but don't forget you can get your copy anywhere now in Egypt, and ASU bookstores deliver as well to your home. And thank you so much, Farah, for this lovely moderation of this talk, and Professor Hoath. It was so good and interesting for everyone. It made me want to go outside and
yes, please.
Yes,
it's tip of the iceberg.
Yeah, exactly. I do it all the time, but
get me down for just an hour.
Now I'm gonna pay attention. I'm gonna have the guide with me. I'm gonna.
Yeah, it's kind of dangerous for me to drive in the morning. I end up looking up through the windshield.
But I would also ask you guys for any feedback that you get. That would be good.
Yes,
of course.
If you have more questions, please feel free to drop a comment on our page, and we're gonna send them to Professor Hoath and Farah. We would like to give you more insight into that. So terrific. I think that's a wrap, and thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Farah. Thank you, Professor Richard and Ingrid and Khaled and everyone who joined us. And have a lovely rest of the day wherever you are. Okay.
Okay. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Bye-bye to everyone.